Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Esquire Coaching Radio, where we help attorneys achieve unparalleled personal and professional success. And now here's your host, Ann Jenrette Thomas.
Hello everyone. Welcome to Esquire Coaching Radio. It's such a pleasure to be here with you tonight. As you know, Esquire Coaching is a national coaching and consulting firm that's dedicated to helping lawyers achieve extraordinary whole life success. And to that end, we discuss a full range of topics from business building to getting a job to work-life balance and everything in between. Today, we have a very special guest who is going to talk to us about a really important topic. She's going to talk to us about leadership and fear. Lawyers are leaders, whether actively or by default. Our clients are looking to us to lead them to the best possible solutions and find answers for them. Having the letters ESQ behind our name confers a certain level of respect and leadership. Yet rarely does the conversation embody both leadership and fear in the same sentence. Leaders are expected to be passionate, knowledgeable, wise, strong, confident, and powerful, but fearful? Not so much. So in today's discussion, we are going to have a leadership expert, Hanham, talk to us about how you can lean into the fear so you can really grow as a leader. And I'm really excited about this. Before I welcome you, Jean, let me just tell everyone a little bit about your background. Jean is the co-founder and coach at Atrio Professional Life Coaches. She's also a founder of JMH Consulting Group, and she is a very valuable member of the Esquire Coaching team. Jean has a passion for living life to its full potential and helping her clients do the same. Her transformative coaching and consulting ensures that her clients live their intended legacy. Jean has over 20 years of business experience with an MBA from Columbia University. She's held leadership positions at Reader's Digest, Catalina Marketing, among other places. She's also a graduate of the Coaches Training Institute Leadership Program and just has a wealth of information to share on this topic. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you so much. Really excited to be here today, so thanks so much for the warm welcome.
Oh, sure. I'm excited to have you here. This is such a hot and I think a little bit of a taboo topic. So I love topics like this. Before I dive into the first question, I just want to remind our audience that if you have a question for Jean, there will be a time at the end of this interview to call and ask her. Simply call 347-838-8719 and press 1. That's 347-838-8719 and press 1. So now, why do you have so much passion for this topic of leadership and fear?
Well, and I believe the topic of leadership and fear is at the heart of so many challenges that are in the world today. When people lead from a place of fear, they not only hold themselves back from being the best that they can be, but they also hold back those that they lead from achieving their greatest potential. And so it really strikes a chord with me, and I think Marianne Williamson said it so nicely in a poem, Our Deepest Fear. She said that as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And this is just a thought that I keep in front and center for myself when I'm leading.
Oh, I love that. And I love Marianne Williamson and that quote in particular. So you work with all kinds of leaders. What are some of the common fears that leaders have based on what you've seen and heard?
Well, from the things that I experience in the marketplace, and I would say when I say marketplace, I mean clients that are working in the professional world as well as those that are addressing fear on a personal level, that the biggest fear is fear of failure. And it's such a common fear that people have. Also coupled with that is fear of not being good enough, fear of being seen as weak, the fear of not being liked or letting someone down, the fear of making a mistake, and also the fear of not being who others think you are. So when you're in that leadership position, often leaders feel that somehow they got here and they don't know how. Maybe they don't believe they deserve it. And so then they've got to kind of put on that mask and pretend to be someone that they're not and hide behind that, so that fear that they have doesn't show.
That's amazing. You know, you touched on some fears that I think lawyers across the board really struggle with, you know, just by virtue of the position that we're in and the fact that people are trusting us to provide advice and counsel, and, you know, you're on the hook. So you really hit it. Fear of failure, being seen as weak, you know, making a mistake and not being who others think you are, or like a fraud. Those, I felt like check when you were going through that.
And isn't it true across, I mean, it's absolutely true for attorneys and for so many other professions as well, and even true for, like, you know, a mom or a dad in their role as parents. I mean, it's just these things, they come up, and we lead in so many different ways in our lives, and these are things that we've got to be able to step in and face.
You know, before I ask you the next question, can you just speak a little bit more about leading in so many different ways? You just mentioned about being a parent. I'd like you to just talk about that, because I think people don't necessarily own how they are leaders. So would you talk a little bit about that first?
Yeah, sure. I guess, you know, it's part of my belief system that we are all leaders. And we can hold titles that say that we're a leader by default because we are the managing partner in a firm, or because we're the CEO of a company, or we're the coach of a team. But the reality is that how we show up in every aspect of our life is in some way leading, and it has an impact on others. So that the piece specific to parenting, like, yeah, we're leaders of our families, and what we do, how we behave, what we say has an impact. And as a leader, we take responsibility for that, no differently than how we show up in an organization and our need to take responsibility for the impact that we have on those people that we lead in those businesses.
Oh,
that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Totally, and I love what you said. We are all leaders. I fully agree with that, and I think that's a very important point. Now, just going back to the fears that you had mentioned earlier, what impact can or do these fears that you listed have on leaders and those that they lead?
That's a great question, and I believe that if fear is holding a leader back from being their best, the impact is that those that they lead will also be held back from being their best. John Maxwell probably said this best, at least in a simplified way for me to understand. He's the author of the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And in his book, he has a law called the Law of the Lid. And the basic premise is that the team can only succeed as far or move and grow as much as the leader, because the leader sets the bar. In a sense, it really sets the bar for how high we can go, how successful we can be, how much we can grow. And so it's that law of the lid is a huge impact when we bring fear. Also, what I see it from a fear perspective and the impact is that fear can paralyze a leader. So they can just get stuck. And it also can have an impact on their behaviors. So if a leader is leading from a place of fear, they can do things like micromanage a team. They may be unwilling to let go of control. And as a result, they don't delegate to others. And again, they're hindering growth and creativity. And so it's their own fear that is having such a tremendous impact on those that they're intended to lead.
That's a great point. You know, about 3 weeks ago, we had a guest that talked a bit about the pathway to partnership, you know, from associate to partner. And one of the things that you're reminding me of right now is you know, this fear to delegate, you know, that there's a real transition when you are an associate and you're getting fed assignments versus when you're a partner, and the job is really how can you delegate as much of the work out as possible. And I think that what you're raising right now is really, it's so applicable on so many levels, not only in the law firm setting, but I'm thinking about the sole proprietors when, you know, when you are the sole person or one of very few that are responsible for your business, this concept of the law of the lid, I mean, I think it's most pronounced in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Another place that I didn't mention that it shows up too, and I see this in work that I do with clients, it's the place where it like breaks my heart, is when fear coupled with leadership is that the leader uses fear as a way to lead. And so they instill fear.
I see that all the time. So
yeah,
with our clients.
It really is the heartbreaker, because what they do is they'll instill fear as a way of leading, and by doing that, what they're seeking is really just to control others. So it happens again both in people's behavior on a personal and professional level in leading, but it's this need to instill fear that it has this impact. And what the leaders probably don't recognize is that need to control, that need to use fear is really based on their own fears not being addressed.
Wow. That's a very powerful statement. And what I love is the distinction that you're making. I think sometimes people think that control and controlling others equals leadership, but really what I'm hearing you say is that is the exact opposite of leadership.
Yeah, leadership really asks for people to step into that place of being willing to relinquish control, like fully letting go and giving people the opportunity to grow, and trusting that, just really putting trust in the fact that they'll step up and rise to the occasion. So yeah, when that control piece shows up, it's like, uh-oh, you know, here's going to be a tough one to work
You
with.
just hit a hot button. Because think about it, Dean, you know, being willing to relinquish control, is that not a huge trigger for fear?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
You said this was kind of an edgy topic, and it is.
It is, and I'm so glad you said that, because this topic does feel edgy, and I just want, you know, like we're speaking about an elephant in the room. Is that your experience about this topic of leadership and fear?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some leaders that won't go near the topic, and most often when the topic feels too close to home for them. And so, you know, there have been cases over the last several years where I've coached teams, and a leader has let me know that the team needs some fixing and can I come in and work with them, but hey, I don't need any coaching. And the message and flag that comes up to me is otherwise known as, hi, I'm perfect, and just fix my team. And it really, again, comes back down to it's showing to me that there is fear there. There's fear of being exposed. There's fear of being vulnerable and letting someone else see that there's opportunity for them to grow, that there are challenges, that there are obstacles, that there are mistakes that are going to get made. And that edginess is there. And it gets really sensitive and personal for them.
I bet. You know, what happens when you work with a leader who does not want to step in and does not want to deal with this edge or with this elephant in the room?
Usually, Anne, it means it's a short engagement.
Isn't that true?
It is. You know, as the CEO of Esquire Coaching, that the clients that you're going to work with are the ones who are ready to step in and really say that, hey, I want to take my game to the next level. And so for me, when I work with a client and I see that elephant and the client wasn't forthcoming to say, hey, you know what, there are some challenges here, I want to grow, I want to use the resources available, that if they're not saying that, then it's likely that they'll put me in a position to work with their team and I'm going to hear about it from the team. And if the leader's still unwilling to address those concerns that are being raised, unfortunately that law of the lid plays for me too as someone that's brought in to work with the team. I can only do so much with the team as a coach because that lid impacts me and my ability to work with the team. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It does, because what I'm hearing you say is even your work can only go as far as that lid, you know, if you're not able to help raise it.
Yeah. So you need all hands on board or all hands on deck, I think is as they say. Yeah. And ready to jump in and say, hey, you know what, we want to take our game to the next level. Or myself personally, I want to do this. When I work with a team, you really need everybody on board. Individually, certainly you can work past the lid of an organization because individuals will say, I want to elevate what I'm doing and I'll work through what the obstacles are. Much more difficult to do with a team when the leader doesn't want to step in.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you help leaders overcome their fears? How can they help themselves too?
So a couple of thoughts here. I would say that the most important thing that I do in my work is create a space for that candid conversation, a place where the leader can be honest with themselves and a place where there's a willingness to recognize the impact or limitations that are created by the fears that they have. And so it's like having that place where you can kind of look at them, look your fear in the eye and say, hey, you know what, this is something that I am going to overcome and I need strategies and tools to do it so that I can be more effective. I think having a judge-free zone or the ability to create that for a leader is really important. The role of a coach is to be there to help the person grow, help them be more effective in their role, and not to judge them, and by all means not to knock them down. It's to bring them up and to be that person on their team. So that's from a coaching perspective that I feel like as soon as the leader is willing to invest in understanding themselves, their impact, and how to get from where they are as a leader to where they want to be, that there are plenty of resources available. First step is for them to say, to gain that self-awareness that I can be even more impactful as a leader than I am today if I face my fears. And then the next place is to say, okay, what are the resources and tools I need in order to accomplish that?
That's very powerful. Now, one thing that I'm curious about is, what do you do when you might, as a coach, create a judgment-free zone? But I have found that sometimes internally, the client, the person that you're coaching, they might be the worst judge of themselves. How do you deal with that space?
You know, it takes time. The work that we're talking about is not work that happens overnight. And so if we think about how long it takes someone to get to this point in their career or in their life where they've worked really hard to put themselves in that position where they are perceived as a leader, where they may have the title of leader, where they are the leader of a family, whatever it is, it takes years to get there, right? And so it doesn't take just days to change that inner working that is filled with self-judgment. It takes time, and it takes reinforcement. And there are tools that help with that, but there, in a sense, is some rewiring that goes on for us. when we come out of, I'm not going to sit here and judge myself and what I do as poor. I'm going to see that there's an opportunity for me to grow and even be better than I am today. And so little by little, you take self-judgment out and you fill it with the stuff that's going to make them more powerful as a leader, and powerful in a good sense.
This is really great because I think people need to recognize that it's a process. There is no quick fix. There's no, it's just, if you've been living with fear and judgment for a long time, it is certainly not going to just disappear in a flash.
Right. This is true. And lots of, leaders want it to disappear in a flash.
Oh, sure.
I know, I've been there myself. We are a society of instant gratification, and it's like, gosh, I went to that session, I took that class, I read that book, and why is this still an issue?
Oh, my gosh, I know. I think that's the other piece that I love about what you're saying and what you do. It's an experiential process, right? It is not enough to intellectually understand something. You have to be able to apply it. And, the best way I know how to relate that to our audience is, when you went to law school, you may have learned all of the theories. You may have learned some basic laws in your state or in certain practice areas, but you didn't get it. You really did not get it until you started practicing. And I think that is that's the nuance here that you're talking about.
Such a great reminder to me, Anne, is that it does take practice. It's a great point. Is there are simple things that we can do every day. It's not an overhaul. It's little sprinkles of this and that take us from where we are to where we want to go. It's a step each day. And for some, it's a quarter of a step. But being aware and knowing that in order to get from where I am to where I want to go, I need to take just a little step, or just part of a step today, and I'll do another one tomorrow, that you're going to get closer and closer to that place that you want to be as a leader.
Yeah. A great point. Before I continue asking questions, I just want to remind the audience, if you have a question for Jean, you want to get her live on this call, just simply call 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the queue. That's 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the queue. All right, Jean, so, this is such a juicy, robust topic. Are there any resources that you would recommend regarding this topic?
Okay, so the topic of leadership and fear. Of course, I would have to make a plug for coaches to say that they are an excellent resource. And the excellentness of that resource, if that's even a word, excellentness, is that coaches are chosen by the leader as someone, one, you look for someone who is trained, you look for someone who is skilled in the area that you're looking to work in, but I would say most importantly, not separate from, but in addition to those two things, is that you find someone that you connect with. And that person that you connect with is someone that you trust and can open up to. And it allows for the doors to open on those fears that we often block and say, let me really take a look at this and let me do it with someone's help. Because I know if I look in the eye and really kind of dive in and work through this, that I'm going to be a better leader and ultimately I'm going to be a better person. So that's my piece for, specific to coaching. There are also groups that are designed for leaders and groups that are profession specific, groups that are designed for men and women with no profession in mind, groups that are designed for people who are in what one would call a leadership role in business, that meet on a regular basis, that have like-minded people, and it's a venue for talking about what are the challenges that we face as leaders. And so that's another forum where fears can be brought up and discussed. I think that there are several excellent books. I referenced earlier on the call John Maxwell, and he's someone that, you know, I've probably read almost all of his books. I think he had a recent new one. I haven't gotten to that yet. And there's ways to get feedback on how we're doing as a leader. So tools like a 360 feedback that can flag us to say, you know what, there are some areas that I need to work on, and I wonder why that's showing up as feedback from the team. I wonder what it is that I'm not willing to step into that has me getting that feedback again. So those are some of the ones that I think are pretty important.
Oh, those are excellent, excellent, and a wide variety of resources that would really support an individual in not only growing as a leader, but also overcoming fear. You know, I thought it might be fun, or maybe not, but to see, you mentioned a number of specific fears earlier. Mm-hmm. What might be a way to challenge, let's see, which one? No. Oh, how about this fear? Making a mistake, fear of making a mistake. What might be some tips or ways that you would encourage people to challenge that particular fear?
You're putting me on the spot, Ann.
I know.
No, it's excellent. Love being put on the spot because I'm going to fear failing right now.
I love you for saying that. Oh, I hope you all heard that. That is real. Okay,
and that is what it is that when we fear failing, we actually also fear succeeding beyond what we thought was possible. So the visual I like to use for life is that we're kind of driving down a road, and the road's got multiple lanes. It's like a highway, and when we're not willing to take chances, when we fear failure, so we don't go for anything that's risky, we drive life down the middle lane because it's safe, because we're not going to go off the road to the left or the right. We don't have to step on the gas to pass, and we're just going. And when we risk failing, we actually allow ourselves, in some cases, to slow down, to let the other cars pass by, because we get a different vantage point by slowing down. We get to see what's out there. And so the risk of failing there may be now we're going too slow, everybody's passing us by. But we also might go to the fast lane and risk failing because now we're passing stuff by too quickly or, whatever. But for me, living in that middle lane doesn't allow for us to experience the things full range in life or as a leader. And so getting through that risk of making a mistake or that risk of failing is like, dare to do it. And if you fail, then you just kind of pick up from where you are, you learn from the experience, and you move on.
I love this analogy. Right? Yeah, that's a great image. That's a great image. Get out of the middle lane, people.
The middle lane's fine. Sometimes we need to be there, but don't live your life as a person and as a leader in the middle lane only.
I agree. Well, Jean, you're not going to believe this, but we are nearly out of time. Can you please let our listeners know how they can reach you?
Absolutely. Folks can reach me a couple of different ways. I have both a Facebook and LinkedIn if they want to reach me through social media. They can also connect with me through either of my business websites, and those are AtrioLifeCoaches.com or through jmhconsultinggroup.com. So, and it's Jean Hanham. I think my name is up on your broadcast, so they'll be able to see how to spell that, but it's easy enough to find me through LinkedIn or also through Facebook. And I welcome people to connect with me.
Excellent. And I encourage all the listeners to, in fact, connect with Jean. Plus, you know, let's keep this conversation going. Join us on our Esquire Coaching Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn as well. You can find all the links on our website, www.esquirecoaching.com. I think it's a great way. Let's just talk about leadership and fear. Jean, you have been amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And folks, I just want to let you know, next week we are talking about how to manage the holiday stress. We
will be on that call to listen.
Okay, good.
Great topic. Thank you so much for having me on the program, Ann.
Oh, thanks, Jean. All right, everyone, have a great night.